Welcome to Layer 05 of the first serial experiment. Headphones and full-screen video are recommended for full appreciation of this experiment. Please enjoy.
Protocol Layer 09.
As Serial Experiments Lain moves through its second act, for the most part the show is much easier to follow. So long as the viewer has a solid foothold on all the things that the series has presented us with up until this point, the plot progression is actually fairly direct. Even the art book ceases to provide hint-like flavor text on the side. In this episode, Lain uses her dissociative identities as a sort of tool in dealing with Taro, whom she strings along to get more information about the Knights and why they're after her. She also continues to struggle with the questions of who she is and whether or not there is another her in the Wired, but makes no real progress on this front. While Lain does get some great scenes in this episode as her series-long characterization really comes into its own, she doesn't ultimately make much progress for the plot. One interesting thing of note is that Lain shows us how the music played in the Siberia Club somehow makes it a stronger waypoint between the Wired and physical worlds. This explains finally how Lain appeared in this place as her Wired persona before she ever had full access to the Wired, which may give cause to rethink some of what we've known about her from before. The voices in the Wired tell us that Lain has existed for as long as the Wired has. Aside from Lain's part, this episode features frequent cutaways to pseudo-historical documentary pieces that seem to be explaining the creation of the Wired in its most primal form. They also introduce us to the man who first turned it on, who immediately killed himself and took on a Wired identity, and appears before Lain at the end of the episode. I'll save my musings on the Wired's existence for the coming episodes where it is really commented on.
Layer 05 will continue after some minor set changes.
The underworld is overflowing with the dead. The tip of the tongue descends, stopping at the cleft. It feels very good. Someone help me. The prophecy shall be fulfilled. What should be feared is what cannot be seen. I don't have many friends. Information softly strokes my lip. Pain. Unbearable pain. The soft spot below the ear. The shadows, green and red striped sweater, are always pooled with blood. Who is Lain? I want to crack open the skull and just remove the pain. Nails pry open the scab, gouging. Infornography.
Layer 10.
Again, the series has gotten pretty direct at this point, so there's not much to analyze per se. I was kind of surprised actually when the God of the Wired stated up front that Lain had originally existed within the Wired and that her physical self was the one which had been created second, because the rest of the episode was only building up to that idea. However, that doesn't mean there's nothing here worth a look. Lain's last conversation with her father gives us some possible insight as to why her original Wired self might have created a human version and set her up with a fake family and existence. It seems like her Wired self may have wanted to know the loneliness of being disconnected, and created a version of herself that not only wasn't connected to the hive mind of the internet, but had difficulty even communicating with people on the most basic level. However, once she came to the realization that even without being directly wired into everyone else on Earth, everyone is still inherently connected no matter what, her physical self started on the path to matching up with her Wired self. This is just my theory for the time being, and it may change in the coming episodes, but it seems like the best way of explaining the things that Lain's father says. Also in this episode, Lain tracks down all of the Knights, whom we also learn are indeed meant to reference the Knights Templar, whom you've probably heard of from the Da Vinci Code or Assassin's Creed, and puts their names out in public, leading the Men in Black to hunt them all down. With Lain's opposition neutralized and her connection to the Wired reaching its final stage, Serial Experiments Lain moves into its third and final act, whereupon we hope to find whatever answers are left.
This concludes Layer 05. Please stay in attendance as Layer 6 will begin soon.